Everybody's rightfully so obsessed with defensive line, but what really pushes, I think, the Niners window back open is Dre Greenlaw's replacement. Now, the Niners do have about $45+ million in cap space should they want to keep Dre Greenlaw, but Fred Warner's running mate and then ultimate replacement is the biggest part of pushing the window back open. Although I'm not going to say back open. I'm going to say open because I think it's a different window. And I don't think people quite realize. I think people have characterized it as the last year was the last dance. I said, no, it's not. So now that this is the last dance, I don't think it is. Like a good middle manager, I'll throw a quote up on the board. I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. Andy Bernard, philosopher. The window that the Niners have now, all these championship windows are crank windows until you lose your single star centerpiece, right? Like it's not a crank when Steph Curry leaves the Warriors. That's all. We're going to just replace the whole thing. But it's a crank. It can open, it can close, it can open a little bit. It can be a sliver, it can be wide. And if you're not convinced, think about this. A year ago, the Niners were in the Super Bowl, right? 13 months ago, the Niners were in the Super Bowl. Now, it's 2 seasons ago when we get to this coming season. But a year later, there are going to be 4 guys who played in the game on defense still on the team. 3 core defenders at each level, one at each level. Bosa, Warner, and Diamador Lenore. If Dre Greenlaw were to return, that'd make 5 because Jair Brown is also on that list, Jair Brown. But 3 core guys, 4 total defenders. So I think you have a hard time, and I know there's, a little more than half of the offense is back, but new right guard, new center, will Juice be back? That's a big question. Ayuk's on a new contract, so that's new window. And then wide receiver 2 is different. Ricky Pearsall, if you want to call. I call him wide receiver 2, just in terms of where he stands. Juwan Jennings is at the end of his contract, and he'll need another contract after this year. So, the offense is more the same, and obviously the quarterback's the same, but it's basically a brand new defense. 2 coordinators later, 2, by the way. So I don't think it's the same window. And for this team, the quarterback getting better, the quarterback being able to handle more of the load, especially as he gets paid, is critical. If your quarterbacks can't live up to his contract, then that closes your window. If your quarterback is a guy worth paying, then locking up your quarterback actually pushes a window open. We'll find out what it is with Brock. But I think just in terms of how much they've churned on defense, this is not the same window. This is not last year's window. I think we've kind of skipped into, to go back to the end of Bernard quote, a new day that's different than the old day. I said middle management. You know what middle management loves? A PowerPoint with multiple quotes, lofty goals. So I'll throw another one at you, a Greek proverb. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit in. Well, guess what? The football ain't that. You're not planting for some other GM. You're trying to do it for yourself. And what the Niners need is a linebacker that will ultimately be Fred Warner's replacement, but right now will be his running mate. I think having a dynamic, the Mason Graham, and I read again today, everyone loved, and I talked to a scout a while back, I've mentioned this, who says he thinks Mason Graham it's a good chance he's there for the Niners. I'm not sure he's the cure-all that, sometimes we talk about him as. But I know Barrows wrote about it and the possibility of a Mason Graham, a defensive tackle. Take him. That's not where you're getting your linebacker anyway. The linebacker you want's going too high. Where the Niners have gotten their linebackers, Fred Warner beginning of the 3rd round, Dre Greenlaw middle of the 5th. We'll see the comp picks announced in a couple of weeks probably. But we had a pretty good idea that the Niners will have enough ammo in that range to try and take a stab. And I think this week, it's one thing to pick the guy at 11. It's not easy, but when you're drafting 11, there's probably, we'll see what this draft ends up being. Maybe there's 15 guys you have a 1st round grade on anyway. So drafting making the choice at 11 shouldn't be that hard. And it's not going to be your Fred Warner running mate. But where they really have to do their digging, their finding, their discovering is at the number 2 linebacker spot. This team has just felt like it's lacked speed on offense and defense. Even as he ages into his prime, Fred Warner still stands out when you watch the 49ers athletically. He is just on another level from most of the other players they have. He just looks like a guy that runs by all his teammates. They need another guy like that. And while I'm not opposed to bringing Dre Greenlaw back at the right price, I think we have to acknowledge how much the Niners are already walking a tightrope with Brandon Ayuk being critical to their success. He won't be ready for the season. Christian McCaffrey coming off an injury being critical to their success. Will he last the season? So now you're going to go another core piece with so many question marks like Dre Greenlaw. It just makes me uncomfortable. And whether he's back or not, I still think you have to approach this draft like you are looking for your next surefire. Is there such a thing? Linebacker. I think that's more critical. Defensive line, of course, matters. Of course. But this defense needs to get dynamic. They're going to lose Mooney Ward, and their safeties, Malik Mustafa, he's dynamic, but young. Jair Brown's not dynamic. So it's not a luxury item. Dre Greenlaw to me is the luxury item. Like, you want to bring him back, fine. But you better draft a guy that you think can replace him. And they've tried that in a couple drafts, and it has not worked. And this is, is a critical combine like they all are for the 49ers. But it's because we're in a new window already, not because you're trying to squeeze one more championship out of the last window. Most of the defense is different. The defensive coordinator is different. I think Saleh helping them identify, because, and I mentioned this before, he's now been involved in drafts as a head coach. There's got to be a level of trust for him to say, guys, this is the linebacker we need. There's 4 kickers at this combine. New special teams coach, Brant Boyer. If there's going to be some sort of kicker competition, you know how I feel. It's some veteran is not beating out Moody. But could some undrafted free agent beat out Jake Moody? Maybe, his percentage is not good enough, but I think he's probably going to win most competitions. So there's just a lot. There's a lot they need. And there is some that they have. They started the replenishing last year and did a good job. That rookie class was really impactful. They need to do it again. And that's how you push this. That's how you push a crank window back open. Because that's what this is. It's a crank window. Debo, we haven't even mentioned him, but obviously he's gone. By the way, I thought this was, you talk about pressure. Like, this is not the thing that adds any pressure to Kyle Shanahan. But I got an email today. I get these emails all the time from various, it's like a gambling website will create a study, and then as a way to do promo for that website, will, email that study out. This one came from, I got this email from The Sports Geek, so I'll give them their credit since they did the research. But they did the research on the most viewed YouTube teams, not on content creation, but just highlights. So this is a table I have showing the average YouTube views for every NFL team. They totaled up the number of views each team got for their regular season highlight videos on the official NFL YouTube account, and then found the average number of views for each team. I'm not surprised. Now, this is not like pressure on Kyle, but this is when you are, hey, championship or bust team every year. We're like, oh, championship or bust this year. It's what it is every year. When you prop yourself up, as the organization has, right? It's all about Super Bowls, the quest for 6. Then, you've got a high standard. But the viewership numbers on TV the viewership numbers on TV have always reflected this. And I think they reflected here. So here's the results. Kansas City 1, Baltimore 2. The Niners won 6 games, by the way. Although you could argue all their games were close, so YouTubes were worth watching. Dallas 4. Detroit 5. Pittsburgh 6. Buffalo 7. Philly 8. Cincy 9. Minnesota 10. There's your top 10. I'm not surprised. I mean, this is a top 5 franchise. So, act like it. There's no chase a championship this year, rebuild next year. No, it's, when you're an organization like this, yes, you must plant trees for the future. You also just do what really rich people do when they remodel. You just buy trees and you import them and you plant them. So you got to do both of those things simultaneously. Let's check the bottom just for fun. Tennessee 32. The average views 634,000. Jacksonville 31. Colts 30. I'll continue reading. Carolina 29. 28 New England. 27 Miami. 26. It's 26. How can I read? 26. The Raiders. I was always told biggest brand fan base in the league. Giants 25. Interesting. Who's the Raiders' next quarterback going to be? There is a college guy that is so obvious. I can't say it, but it's so. If you study it, if you put it in the comments, I can confirm. I can't say it, but there is a college quarterback to the Raiders that is. You just got to know some college football to know this guy is obvious. It is so obvious who the Raiders will like. Just saying. Stafford would be good too. Be a great bookend to Stafford's career. Start with Detroit, then go to LA, then finish with the Raiders. The kind of Lions-Raiders finish. Be a strong bookend. Yeah. All right. So let me know what you think. New window? I say yes. Critical week? No doubt about it. Championship or bust? Sure. But not because it's the end of an old window. It's because that is the standard. When you say and you act like one of the best franchises in the league.